On a stormy night in March 1286, a king rode alone through the darkness, his fate sealed by a single, fatal misstep. Alexander III of Scotland, a ruler who had brought stability and strength to his kingdom, was found dead at the foot of a cliff. But was this truly an accident, or something far more sinister? For centuries, whispers of conspiracy have surrounded his death, with theories ranging from political betrayal to outright murder. Who stood to gain from the fall of a king, and why does this medieval mystery still captivate us today? In this video, we'll unravel the tangled web of intrigue, power, and suspicion that surrounds the death of Alexander III. From rival nobles to foreign enemies, from poisoned plots to hidden agendas, the truth may be more shocking than the legend. Stay with us as we dive into the mystery of the poisoned crown and uncover the secrets that history has tried to bury. By the end, you'll decide for yourself, was this a tragic accident or a carefully orchestrated crime? To understand the mystery surrounding Alexander III's death, we must first step back and examine the man himself, his life, his reign, and the world he shaped. Alexander III, often called Alexander the Glorious, ascended to the throne of Scotland in 1249, following the death of his father, Alexander II. At just 8 years old, he inherited a kingdom fraught with tension, caught between the ambitions of powerful nobles and the looming threat of English influence. Yet, despite his youth, Alexander would grow to become one of Scotland's most formidable and beloved monarchs. During his reign, Alexander worked tirelessly to strengthen Scotland's independence and unity. He successfully negotiated the Treaty of Perth in 1266, securing the Western Isles from Norway and solidifying Scotland's territorial claims. His leadership brought a rare period of peace and prosperity to the kingdom, earning him the loyalty of his people and the respect of his peers. But Alexander's reign wasn't just about diplomacy and expansion. It was also a time of cultural flourishing, with the arts and architecture thriving under his patronage. However, the political climate of medieval Scotland was far from stable. The kingdom was a patchwork of rival clans and factions, each vying for power and influence. Alexander's ability to navigate these treacherous waters was a testament to his skill as a ruler. He balanced the demands of his nobles while keeping Scotland's sovereignty intact, a delicate act that required both strength and cunning. Yet, this very success made him a target. His death in 1286 didn't just mark the end of a reign, it plunged Scotland into chaos. Alexander's passing left a void that would have far-reaching consequences. With no clear heir to the throne, the kingdom teetered on the brink of civil war, setting the stage for the wars of Scottish independence. His death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a turning point in history, one that would shape the destiny of Scotland for generations to come. And that's why the question of how he died matters so much. Was it truly an accident, or did someone see an opportunity to topple a king and seize power? The answer lies in the shadows of history, waiting to be uncovered. Now, let's turn our attention to the night that changed everything, the stormy evening when Alexander III met his untimely end. What really happened on that fateful journey to Kinghorn? And why do so many believe there's more to the story than meets the eye? The night of Alexander III's death was one of chaos and mystery, a stormy evening that would forever alter the course of Scottish history. It was March 18, 1286, and the king had been traveling to Kinghorn, a small coastal town in Fife, to reunite with his young wife, Queen Yolande. The journey itself was fraught with danger as the weather had taken a dramatic turn for the worse. Rain lashed down in sheets, and the wind howled with such ferocity that it seemed to echo the unrest brewing within the kingdom. Alexander had spent the day at Edinburgh Castle, where he attended a council meeting with his advisors. Despite the worsening conditions, he was determined to make the trip. Some say it was his eagerness to see his wife that drove him forward, while others suggest there may have been more pressing matters at hand. Whatever the reason, the king set out on horseback, accompanied by a small group of attendants. The route to Kinghorn was treacherous even in good weather, with steep cliffs and narrow paths overlooking the churning waters of the Firth of Forth. That night, the storm made it nearly impassable. As the party pressed on, the darkness grew thicker, and the storm showed no signs of relenting. At some point, Alexander became separated from his attendants. Whether it was due to the poor visibility or the king's own impatience to reach his destination, we may never know. What we do know is that at some point during that perilous journey, Alexander's horse stumbled, sending the king tumbling over the edge of a cliff. His body was discovered the following morning, broken and lifeless at the base of the rocky outcrop. The official account of his death was clear, a tragic accident brought on by the storm and the king's own haste. But even then, whispers of doubt began to spread. How could a king, surrounded by attendants, meet such a fate without anyone noticing until it was too late? Why had he been so insistent on traveling in such dangerous conditions? And perhaps most importantly, who stood to gain from his sudden demise? The storm that night may have been fierce, but it was nothing compared to the tempest that would follow in the wake of Alexander's death. With no clear heir to the throne, Scotland was thrown into a crisis that would shape its future for decades to come. But before we explore the aftermath, let's take a closer look at the official story. Was Alexander's death truly an accident, or was there more at play beneath the surface? Now, let's turn our attention to the official story, the version of events that paints Alexander III's death as nothing more than a tragic accident. At first glance, the explanation seems straightforward. The storm that night was relentless, with rain and wind so fierce that even the most experienced travelers would have struggled. The path to Kinghorn was notoriously dangerous, with steep cliffs and narrow trails that became even more treacherous in such conditions. It's easy to see how a misstep, even by a seasoned rider like Alexander, could lead to disaster. The lack of immediate witnesses also supports the idea of an accident. With visibility near zero and the storm drowning out any cries for help, it's plausible that the king's attendants simply didn't realize he had fallen until it was too late. The darkness and chaos of the night would have made it nearly impossible to mount a swift rescue. By the time his body was discovered the next morning, the damage was done. Historical records from the time also lean heavily into the accident narrative. Chroniclers of the era described the storm as one of the worst in living memory, emphasizing the natural hazards that contributed to the king's death. There were no immediate signs of foul play, no weapons or suspicious injuries found on the body. To many, it seemed like a tragic but unavoidable twist of fate. Yet, even within this official account, questions linger. Why did Alexander insist on traveling in such perilous conditions? Was it truly his eagerness to reunite with Queen Yolande, or was there something more urgent driving him? And why, despite the presence of attendants, was he left alone at such a critical moment? These gaps in the story have fueled speculation for centuries, leaving room for doubt in what was otherwise presented as a clear-cut accident. As we peel back the layers of this narrative, it's worth considering how the official story served the interests of those in power. Declaring the death an accident would have quelled immediate suspicions and maintained a semblance of stability in a kingdom already on edge. But as we'll soon see, not everyone was convinced by this explanation. The whispers of foul play were already beginning to spread, setting the stage for a mystery that would endure for centuries. With the official story laid out, let's now explore the darker theories that emerged in the wake of Alexander's death. Theories that suggest his demise may not have been as accidental as it seemed. But as the storm clouds cleared and the kingdom began to process the shocking loss of their king, another kind of storm began to brew, one of suspicion and intrigue. Almost immediately, whispers of foul play started to ripple through the courts and taverns of Scotland. While the official story painted Alexander's death as a tragic accident, not everyone was willing to accept it at face value. For many, the timing of the king's death was simply too convenient. Alexander had been a strong and unifying figure, but his reign was not without its tensions. The Scottish nobility was a complex web of rivalries and alliances, and some saw the king's death as an opportunity to seize power or settle old scores. Could one of these ambitious nobles have orchestrated the king's demise? Then there was the matter of Alexander's relationship with England. While he had managed to maintain a fragile peace with his southern neighbors, tensions were never far from the surface. Some speculated that English forces, or even Scottish allies sympathetic to England, might have had a hand in the king's death. After all, a weakened Scotland, thrown into chaos by the loss of its leader, would have been far easier to control or influence. The circumstances of Alexander's journey also raised eyebrows. Why had he chosen to travel in such dangerous conditions? Was it truly his eagerness to reunite with Queen Yolande, or was he responding to some urgent, perhaps even threatening, message? And why, despite the presence of attendants, was he left alone at such a critical moment? These unanswered questions only fueled the growing belief that his death was no accident. Adding to the intrigue were the rumors of poisoning, a method of assassination that was all too common in medieval courts. Poison was subtle, effective, and left little trace, making it the perfect tool for those who wished to eliminate a rival without drawing suspicion. Could Alexander have been poisoned before his fateful ride, weakening him just enough to ensure his fall? As these whispers grew louder, they began to take on a life of their own, weaving a darker narrative around the king's death. What started as quiet murmurs in the shadows soon became a chorus of doubt, challenging the official story and pointing to a far more sinister truth. With these suspicions in mind, let's now turn our attention to the key figures who might have had the motive and the means to bring about Alexander's untimely end. As the dust settled on Alexander III's sudden death, Scotland found itself teetering on the edge of chaos. The king's passing left a gaping void at the heart of the kingdom, one that no one had anticipated. Alexander had been a stabilizing force, a ruler who held the fragile threads of Scottish unity together. But now, with his death, those threads began to unravel. The most pressing issue, the lack of a clear heir to the throne. Alexander's only surviving child, Margaret, had died just a few years earlier, leaving his granddaughter, also named Margaret, as his heir. But here was the problem. She was just a child, known as the Maid of Norway, and she lived far from Scotland. This meant that the kingdom was left without a ruler who could immediately step in and take control. The absence of a strong, capable leader created a power vacuum, and into this vacuum rushed the ambitions of Scotland's nobility. The nobles, already a fractious and competitive group, saw an opportunity to advance their own interests. Some sought to position themselves as regents, hoping to govern in the young Margaret's name until she came of age. Others saw the crisis as a chance to challenge the existing order altogether, perhaps even to claim the throne for themselves. The resulting infighting and political maneuvering only deepened the sense of instability. But the chaos wasn't just about who would rule, it was also about what Alexander's death meant for Scotland's future. The king had worked tirelessly to maintain Scotland's independence, particularly in the face of English pressure. Without him, the kingdom's sovereignty seemed more vulnerable than ever. This vulnerability added another layer of suspicion to the circumstances of his death. Could someone have wanted to destabilize Scotland so badly that they were willing to eliminate its king? The succession crisis also gave rise to darker theories. If Alexander's death wasn't an accident, then it stood to reason that whoever was behind it had something to gain from the chaos that followed. The lack of a clear heir made it easier for ambitious individuals to exploit the situation, and the resulting turmoil only fueled the belief that Alexander's death was part of a larger, more sinister plan. As Scotland struggled to navigate this uncertain new reality, the whispers of conspiracy grew louder. The question wasn't just who would rule next, it was whether the king's death had been orchestrated to make that question so difficult to answer in the first place. And with that in mind, let's now turn to the key figures who might have had the motive to bring about such a devastating outcome. Now, let's turn our attention to the Scottish nobles, a group whose ambitions and rivalries may hold the key to understanding the mystery of Alexander III's death. In the aftermath of the king's sudden demise, the nobles found themselves at the center of a brewing storm. These powerful figures, who had once been united under Alexander's rule, now saw an opportunity to reshape the kingdom to their advantage. But who among them had the motive and the means to orchestrate such a devastating act? One of the most prominent figures to consider is John Balliol, a nobleman with strong ties to both Scotland and England. Balliol's family had long been influential, and his connections to the English crown made him a controversial figure in Scottish politics. Some historians speculate that Balliol may have seen Alexander's death as a chance to strengthen his own position, perhaps even positioning himself as a potential claimant to the throne. His ambitions, combined with his English ties, made him a natural suspect in the eyes of those who believed the king's death was no accident. Another key figure was Robert Bruce, the grandfather of the future king Robert the Bruce. The Bruce family had a long-standing claim to the Scottish throne, and Alexander's death presented them with a golden opportunity to press that claim. The Bruces were known for their fierce independence and their desire to see Scotland free from English influence. If Alexander's death was indeed the result of foul play, the Bruces would have had both the motive and the means to carry it out, especially if they believed it would pave the way for their family's rise to power. Then there were the Comyns, one of the most powerful noble families in Scotland. The Comyns had a history of rivalry with the Bruces, and their influence extended across much of the kingdom. With Alexander gone, the Comyns could have seen an opportunity to eliminate their rivals and consolidate their own power. Their extensive network of allies and resources would have made them capable of orchestrating a plot against the king if they believed it served their interests. But the nobles weren't just acting in isolation, they were part of a complex web of alliances and rivalries. Some may have conspired together, while others may have acted alone, driven by personal ambition or a desire to protect their family's legacy. The lack of a clear heir only heightened the stakes as each noble family vied for control of the throne. In this atmosphere of suspicion and competition, it's easy to see how Alexander's death could have been the result of a carefully plotted scheme. As we examine the motives and actions of these nobles, one thing becomes clear. The political landscape of medieval Scotland was a dangerous place where power was often pursued at any cost. Whether Alexander's death was the work of a single individual or a group of conspirators, the nobles' ambitions undoubtedly played a significant role in the chaos that followed. And as we'll see next, their actions didn't just shape the mystery of Alexander's death, they also set the stage for the struggles that would define Scotland's future. While the Scottish nobles were undoubtedly central to the intrigue surrounding Alexander III's death, we cannot overlook the role of England in this unfolding drama. Shifting our focus across the border, we find a web of political tensions and rivalries that may have played a part in the king's untimely demise. The relationship between Scotland and England during this period was fraught with conflict, and Alexander's death came at a time when both nations were vying for dominance. Could English forces or their allies have had a hand in the tragedy? At the heart of this theory lies the complex and often hostile relationship between the two kingdoms. England, under the rule of Edward I, was a rising power with ambitions to extend its influence over Scotland. Edward, known as the Hammer of the Scots, was a shrewd and calculating ruler who saw Scotland as a potential vassal state. Alexander, however, was determined to maintain Scotland's independence, a stance that put him directly at odds with Edward's ambitions. This tension created a volatile environment, one in which the removal of Alexander could have been seen as a strategic move to weaken Scotland's resistance. One of the key figures in this English connection was John Balliol, whose ties to England we've already touched upon. Balliol's family had strong connections to the English crown, and his loyalty was often questioned by his fellow Scots. Some historians suggest that Balliol may have been acting as a pawn for Edward, using his influence to destabilize Scotland from within. If Alexander's death was indeed orchestrated, Balliol's role as a potential intermediary between Scotland and England cannot be ignored. Another angle to consider is the possibility of direct English involvement. Edward I was known for his ruthless tactics, and he had no qualms about using subterfuge to achieve his goals. Could English agents have infiltrated Alexander's court, waiting for the right moment to strike? The stormy night of the king's death provided the perfect cover for such an act, with the chaos of the weather masking any signs of foul play. While there is no direct evidence to support this theory, the timing and circumstances of Alexander's death raise questions that cannot be easily dismissed. The English connection also ties into the broader geopolitical landscape of the time. Scotland's alliance with France, known as the Old Alliance, was a thorn in England's side. By eliminating Alexander, England could disrupt this alliance and create a power vacuum that would make Scotland more vulnerable to English influence. The death of a strong and independent king like Alexander would have been a significant blow to Scotland's stability, paving the way for Edward to assert his authority. As we piece together the puzzle of Alexander's death, the English connection emerges as a compelling thread in the tapestry of theories. Whether through direct action or indirect influence, England's role in the events surrounding the king's demise cannot be overlooked. And as we'll see next, this theory is just one piece of a much larger and more intricate story, one that continues to captivate historians and enthusiasts alike. Turning our attention to another compelling angle, let's explore the possibility that Alexander III's death was not an accident or the result of a fall, but something far more sinister: poison. Poisoning was a favored method of assassination in medieval courts, a silent and often untraceable way to eliminate rivals without leaving obvious evidence. Could this have been the fate of Scotland's king? Poison was a weapon of choice for those who sought to remove powerful figures discreetly. Medieval courts were rife with intrigue, and poisoning offered a way to strike without the chaos of open conflict. Historical records from the period are filled with accounts of nobles and rulers meeting their end through poisoned food, drink, or even clothing. The lack of advanced forensic techniques made it nearly impossible to detect poison, especially in an era where sudden illness or death was often attributed to natural causes. When we examine the circumstances of Alexander's death, the poisoning theory gains traction. The king's sudden demise after a seemingly ordinary journey raises questions. While the official story points to a tragic fall during a storm, some historians argue that the symptoms described in accounts of his death, such as sudden weakness, confusion, or convulsions, could align with poisoning. Certain toxins, like those derived from plants such as hemlock or belladonna, could have caused such effects, mimicking the appearance of an accident or natural illness. Moreover, the timing of Alexander's death adds another layer of suspicion. His passing came at a critical juncture for Scotland, with tensions high both domestically and internationally. A poisoning would have allowed his enemies to remove him without drawing immediate attention, creating the illusion of a natural or accidental death. This method would have been particularly appealing to those who wished to avoid the backlash of an overt assassination. The theory also ties into the broader culture of medieval politics. Poisoning was not just a tool of personal vendettas, but a strategic weapon in the hands of rival factions. If Alexander's death was indeed the result of poison, it would suggest a carefully planned act, one designed to destabilize Scotland while shielding the perpetrators from blame. The stormy night of his death would have provided the perfect cover, with the chaos of the weather masking any signs of foul play. However, the lack of direct evidence makes this theory difficult to prove. Medieval records are often incomplete or biased, and without modern forensic tools, it's nearly impossible to confirm whether poison was involved. Yet, the possibility remains a tantalizing piece of the puzzle, one that adds depth to the mystery of Alexander's death. As we consider the poisoning theory, it's important to weigh it against the other possibilities we've explored. Was Alexander the victim of a carefully orchestrated plot, or did he meet his end through a tragic accident? The answer may lie somewhere in between, a blend of circumstance and conspiracy that continues to captivate us centuries later. And as we move forward, we'll examine another key player in this unfolding drama, the Church, and its potential role in the events surrounding Alexander's death. Now, let's turn our gaze to another powerful institution of the time, the Church. In medieval Scotland, the Church was not just a spiritual authority but a political force, wielding significant influence over kings and nobles alike. Could it have played a role in Alexander III's mysterious death? The Church's involvement in political matters was not uncommon during this period. Religious leaders often acted as mediators, advisors, and even power brokers, shaping the course of kingdoms. In Alexander's case, the Church had a vested interest in maintaining stability, as his reign had brought relative peace and prosperity to Scotland. However, tensions between the monarchy and the Church were not unheard of, especially when it came to matters of land, wealth, or authority. One theory suggests that certain factions within the Church may have seen Alexander as a threat to their power. His efforts to centralize authority and strengthen the crown could have clashed with the Church's own ambitions. If Alexander's policies were perceived as undermining the Church's influence, it's possible that some religious figures saw his removal as a necessary step to protect their interests. Another angle to consider is the Church's potential role in covering up the truth. If Alexander's death was indeed the result of foul play, the Church's extensive network and moral authority could have been used to suppress any investigation. Medieval records often reflect the biases of those who wrote them, and the Church's control over historical documentation might have allowed it to shape the narrative in its favor. At the same time, it's important to recognize that the Church was not a monolithic entity. Different bishops, abbots, and other religious leaders may have had conflicting loyalties and agendas. While some might have sought to protect Alexander, others could have been complicit in or even orchestrated his demise. The complexity of the Church's internal dynamics makes it difficult to pinpoint its exact role, but it's clear that its influence cannot be ignored. As we piece together the puzzle of Alexander's death, the Church emerges as a key player, its motives and actions intertwined with the political and social fabric of medieval Scotland. Whether as a potential instigator or a silent enabler, the Church's role adds another layer of intrigue to this enduring mystery. And as we continue our exploration, we'll delve into the web of intrigue surrounding Alexander's family, whose own ambitions and rivalries may hold further clues to the truth. Turning our attention to the royal household, we find that Alexander III's family was far from a picture of harmony. In fact, the dynamics within his family may hold some of the most compelling clues to his untimely death. At the heart of this web of intrigue was Alexander's wife, Queen Yolande of Dreux, and his children, whose lives and ambitions were deeply intertwined with the fate of the Scottish crown. Queen Yolande, a French noblewoman, married Alexander in the later years of his reign. While their union was initially seen as a strategic alliance to strengthen ties between Scotland and France, it also introduced new tensions. Yolande's foreign background and her influence over the king may have stirred resentment among some Scottish nobles who viewed her as an outsider meddling in their affairs. Could her presence have inadvertently made Alexander a target, or was she herself a key player in the events that unfolded? Alexander's children, too, were central to the unfolding drama. His first wife, Margaret of England, had borne him 3 children, 2 sons, Alexander and David, and a daughter, Margaret. Tragically, both sons died young, leaving the king without a male heir. This succession crisis cast a long shadow over Alexander's reign and may have fueled the ambitions of those who sought to control the throne. His daughter, Margaret, married to King Eric of Norway, became the mother of Alexander's only granddaughter, Margaret, known as the Maid of Norway. But even this line of succession was fraught with uncertainty, as the young Margaret's claim to the throne would later become a source of contention. Within this fragile family structure, rivalries and alliances were inevitable. Some historians suggest that Alexander's second marriage to Yolande may have alienated his surviving relatives, particularly those who felt their own claims to power were being sidelined. Others speculate that Yolande herself may have had motives to ensure her own position, especially if she feared being marginalized after Alexander's death. The death of Alexander's sons also raises questions about the stability of his lineage. With no clear male heir, the throne was left vulnerable, and the resulting power vacuum may have emboldened those who sought to seize control. Could someone within Alexander's own family have seen his death as an opportunity to advance their own interests? As we unravel the complexities of Alexander's family, it becomes clear that their relationships were as much a source of strength as they were of tension. The bonds of loyalty and ambition within the royal household may have played a pivotal role in shaping the events that led to Alexander's mysterious demise. And as we move forward, we'll explore the next piece of this intricate puzzle, the significance of Alexander's granddaughter, Margaret, Maid of Norway, and how her fate deepened the mystery surrounding his death. Now, let's turn our attention to the young figure who stood at the center of Scotland's uncertain future, Margaret, Maid of Norway. As Alexander III's only granddaughter, Margaret was not just a child but a symbol of hope and continuity for a kingdom teetering on the edge of chaos. Her story, though brief, is one of immense significance, and her untimely death would cast an even darker shadow over the mystery of Alexander's demise. Margaret was the daughter of Alexander's daughter, also named Margaret, who had married King Eric of Norway. When Alexander's sons died young, leaving no male heir, the young Margaret became the next in line for the Scottish throne. At just 3 years old, she was named heir presumptive, a decision that was meant to secure the future of the crown. But her youth and the fact that she was living in Norway made her a vulnerable figure in a world where power was often seized by force. The prospect of a child queen ruling Scotland from afar was a source of both hope and anxiety. On one hand, Margaret represented a legitimate heir who could unite the kingdom under a single ruler. On the other, her absence from Scotland and her tender age made her an easy target for those who sought to manipulate or control the throne. The Scottish nobles, already divided by rivalries, now faced the challenge of ensuring her safe passage and eventual coronation. Tragically, Margaret's story took a devastating turn. In the year 1290, at just 7 years old, she set sail from Norway to Scotland to claim her throne. But the journey ended in heartbreak. Margaret fell ill during the voyage and died before ever setting foot on Scottish soil. Her death was not just a personal tragedy but a political catastrophe. With her passing, the direct line of Alexander III's descendants was extinguished, plunging Scotland into a succession crisis that would have far-reaching consequences. Margaret's death deepened the mystery surrounding Alexander's own demise. Some historians argue that her untimely passing may have been more than just a tragic accident. Could there have been forces at work both within Scotland and beyond that saw her as a threat to their ambitions? The timing of her death, coming so soon after Alexander's own mysterious end, has led to speculation that the two events may be connected. Was the young Margaret's death part of a larger plot to destabilize Scotland and pave the way for a new ruler? The loss of Margaret also left Scotland vulnerable to external pressures, particularly from England. With no clear heir, the kingdom became a battleground for competing claims, setting the stage for the wars of Scottish independence. The absence of a strong, legitimate ruler created a power vacuum that would shape the course of Scottish history for decades to come. As we reflect on Margaret's brief but pivotal role in this story, it's impossible not to wonder how different history might have been had she survived. Her death not only deepened the mystery of Alexander's own fate, but also marked the beginning of a turbulent chapter in Scotland's history. And as we move forward, we'll explore how the chaos that followed her passing fueled suspicions of conspiracy and betrayal, further complicating the question of who really killed Alexander III. Turning now to the historical records, we find ourselves sifting through the fragments of the past to uncover what they might reveal about Alexander III's death. Primary sources from the medieval period are often sparse and fragmented, and the accounts surrounding Alexander's demise are no exception. These records, written by chroniclers of the time, offer glimpses into the events of that fateful night, but they also raise questions about their accuracy and the motives behind their creation. One of the most significant sources is the Chronicle of John of Fordun, a Scottish historian who wrote in the 14th century. Fordun's account describes Alexander's journey to Kinghorn and the stormy conditions that led to his fatal fall. According to Fordun, the king was traveling to meet his young bride, Yolande, when he became separated from his companions in the darkness and was later found dead at the foot of a cliff. This narrative, while compelling, is not without its issues. Fordun wrote decades after the event, and his account may have been influenced by the political climate of his own time, as well as the need to present a coherent story for his audience. Another key source is the Chronicle of Walter Bower, who expanded on Fordun's work in the 15th century. Bower's account adds more detail, including the claim that Alexander's horse stumbled, causing the king to fall. However, like Fordun, Bower was writing long after the fact, and his version of events may have been shaped by the legends and rumors that had accumulated over the years. The reliability of these sources is further complicated by the fact that medieval chroniclers often had their own agendas. Their writings were not just historical records, but also tools for shaping public opinion and reinforcing the legitimacy of certain rulers or factions. This raises the question of whether the accounts of Alexander's death were intended to obscure the truth rather than reveal it. For example, if there were suspicions of foul play, chroniclers loyal to the crown might have downplayed or omitted such details to avoid casting doubt on the stability of the monarchy. Adding to the mystery is the lack of contemporary records. Few documents from the late 13th century survive, and those that do often focus on administrative matters rather than personal or political events. This scarcity of first-hand accounts leaves historians with a patchy and incomplete picture, forcing them to rely on later sources that may have been influenced by the passage of time and the biases of their authors. Despite these challenges, the historical records do offer some clues. The consistent emphasis on the stormy weather and the king's separation from his companions suggests that these were key elements of the official narrative. But whether this narrative was entirely accurate or designed to deflect suspicion remains an open question. The records also hint at the political tensions of the time, with the succession crisis and the involvement of powerful nobles and foreign powers adding layers of complexity to the story. As we piece together these fragments of the past, it becomes clear that the historical records are as much about what they conceal as what they reveal. They provide a framework for understanding Alexander's death, but they also leave room for speculation and interpretation. And as we move forward, we'll explore how modern forensic science might shed new light on this centuries-old mystery, offering fresh perspectives on what really happened that stormy night in Kinghorn. Now, let's step into the world of medieval forensic science, or rather, the lack of it, and consider how this shaped the investigation into Alexander III's death. In the 13th century, the tools and methods we associate with modern forensic science simply didn't exist. There were no autopsies, no chemical analyzers, and no systematic ways to determine the exact cause of death. Instead, investigations relied heavily on eyewitness accounts, physical observations, and often assumptions based on the circumstances surrounding the event. When Alexander's body was discovered at the foot of a cliff, the immediate conclusion was that he had died from injuries sustained in a fall. This was a logical assumption given the stormy weather and the treacherous terrain. However, without the ability to conduct a thorough examination of the body, it's possible that other factors such as poisoning or even foul play were overlooked. Medieval investigators lacked the knowledge and technology to detect subtle signs of poisoning, such as discoloration of the skin or internal damage, which might have been evident to a modern forensic expert. Another limitation was the reliance on superstition and folklore. In the absence of scientific methods, medieval societies often turned to supernatural explanations for sudden or unexplained deaths. While there's no direct evidence that Alexander's death was attributed to anything other than an accident, the cultural context of the time suggests that rumors of curses or divine retribution could have influenced public perception and even the official narrative. The role of the church also played a significant part in shaping how deaths were understood and investigated. Religious authorities often had the final say in determining whether a death was accidental, natural, or the result of human intervention. In Alexander's case, the church's involvement may have reinforced the idea that his death was a tragic accident, as any suggestion of foul play could have destabilized the monarchy and the broader political order. Moreover, the lack of standardized procedures meant that investigations were often inconsistent and subject to the biases of those in power. If there were suspicions of murder, they might have been suppressed to avoid scandal or to protect influential figures. The absence of a formalized justice system, as we understand it today, meant that the truth could easily be obscured or manipulated to serve political or personal agendas. It's also worth noting that the concept of forensic science as we know it didn't emerge until centuries later. The medieval understanding of the human body and the causes of death was limited by the medical knowledge of the time, which was often based on ancient texts rather than empirical observation. This meant that even if investigators had wanted to explore alternative explanations for Alexander's death, they simply didn't have the tools or the framework to do so. As we reflect on these limitations, it becomes clear that the investigation into Alexander's death was shaped as much by the constraints of the era as by the events themselves. The lack of forensic science left many questions unanswered and allowed room for speculation and conspiracy theories to flourish. And as we move forward, we'll explore how modern forensic techniques might offer new insights into this centuries-old mystery, shedding light on what really happened that stormy night in Kinghorn. Now, let's shift our perspective and step into the world of modern forensic science. Imagine if we could take the tools and techniques we have today and apply them to the mystery of Alexander III's death. What might we uncover? Modern forensic science offers a wealth of methods to analyze historical cases like this one, and while we can't go back in time to examine the scene firsthand, we can use what we know to piece together a clearer picture. First, consider the possibility of a toxicology analysis. Today, forensic experts can detect even trace amounts of poison in a body, sometimes centuries after death. If Alexander had been poisoned, modern techniques could identify substances like arsenic or hemlock, which were commonly used in medieval times. Even if his remains were exhumed, advanced chemical testing might reveal evidence of foul play that medieval investigators could never have detected. Next, let's think about the injuries Alexander sustained. Modern forensic pathology could determine whether his wounds were consistent with a fall or if they showed signs of being inflicted by another person. For example, the angle and depth of fractures, as well as the presence of defensive wounds, could provide clues about whether he was pushed or attacked before falling. High-resolution imaging and 3D reconstructions could even recreate the scene, helping us understand the mechanics of his fall and whether it was truly accidental. Another area where modern science could shed light is in the analysis of the environment. Today, forensic meteorologists can reconstruct weather patterns with remarkable accuracy. By examining historical climate data, we could determine just how severe the storm was on the night of Alexander's death. Was the weather truly treacherous enough to make a fall likely, or does the evidence suggest that the storm might have been exaggerated to support the official narrative? DNA analysis could also play a role. If any of Alexander's remains were available, genetic testing could reveal whether he suffered from any underlying health conditions that might have contributed to his death. For instance, a sudden heart attack or stroke could have caused him to lose his footing, making the fall appear accidental when it was actually the result of natural causes. Finally, modern forensic science could help us evaluate the credibility of historical accounts. By cross-referencing eyewitness testimonies with physical evidence, we might uncover inconsistencies or biases that were overlooked at the time. For example, if multiple witnesses described the scene differently, forensic experts could assess which version aligns most closely with the physical evidence, helping us separate fact from fiction. While we can't definitively solve the mystery of Alexander III's death using modern techniques alone, these tools offer a fascinating glimpse into what might have happened. They remind us that history is often more complex than it appears, and that even centuries-old mysteries can still yield new insights. As we continue to explore this story, we'll see how these modern perspectives intersect with the historical record, bringing us closer to understanding the truth behind the poisoned crown. Now, let's turn our attention to how the mystery of Alexander III's death has been viewed through the lens of conspiracy theories over the centuries. From the moment his body was discovered, whispers of foul play began to spread, and these suspicions have only grown more elaborate with time. The story of his death has been shaped and reshaped by the fears, biases, and political agendas of each era, creating a fascinating tapestry of theories that continue to evolve even today. In the immediate aftermath of Alexander's death, the medieval world was quick to speculate. With no clear heir to the throne, Scotland plunged into chaos, and many began to question whether the king's fall was truly an accident. Some pointed fingers at rival Scottish nobles, accusing them of orchestrating the king's demise to seize power. Others suspected foreign involvement, particularly from England, which had long been a rival to Scotland. These early theories were often fueled by political tensions and the lack of concrete evidence, leaving room for imagination to run wild. As the centuries passed, the story of Alexander's death took on new layers. During the Renaissance, when interest in classical learning and scientific inquiry began to flourish, scholars revisited the case with fresh eyes. Some suggested that Alexander might have been poisoned, drawing parallels to other famous royal deaths in history. This theory gained traction as poisoning became a popular explanation for mysterious deaths in literature and political intrigue. The idea of a poisoned crown captured the public's imagination, turning Alexander's death into a symbol of betrayal and treachery. By the 19th century, the rise of historical research and archaeology brought new perspectives to the mystery. Historians began to sift through medieval records with a more critical eye, questioning the reliability of contemporary accounts. Some argued that the official narrative of an accidental fall was a cover-up, designed to protect powerful figures who may have been involved. Others proposed that Alexander's death was part of a larger conspiracy to destabilize Scotland, paving the way for English influence. These theories reflected the growing interest in uncovering hidden truths and challenging established narratives. In the modern era, the advent of forensic science and historical analysis has added yet another dimension to the debate. While some conspiracy theories have been debunked by new evidence, others have been reimagined in light of contemporary concerns. For example, the idea of a poisoned crown has resurfaced in popular culture, often portrayed as a dramatic act of political sabotage. Meanwhile, historians continue to explore the possibility of a staged accident, using modern techniques to re-examine the evidence and challenge long-held assumptions. What's fascinating is how these theories reflect the values and anxieties of the times in which they emerged. In the medieval period, the focus was on power struggles and rivalries. During the Renaissance, the emphasis shifted to intrigue and betrayal. In the modern era, the rise of science and skepticism has led to a more nuanced understanding of the past. Each new interpretation adds to the complexity of the mystery, reminding us that history is never as simple as it seems. As we move forward, the story of Alexander III's death continues to captivate us, not just because of the unanswered questions, but because of what it reveals about how we make sense of the past. Conspiracy theories, in all their variety, are a testament to our enduring fascination with the unknown and our desire to uncover the truth, no matter how elusive it may be. And as we'll see next, this mystery has also left a lasting mark on literature and culture, shaping how we remember Alexander and his tragic end. Now, let's shift our focus to how Alexander III's death has been immortalized in literature, art, and popular culture. Over the centuries, this medieval mystery has inspired countless creative interpretations, each adding its own layer of intrigue to the story. These depictions not only reflect the fascination with Alexander's tragic end, but also shape how we understand and remember the events surrounding his death. In literature, Alexander's story has often been woven into tales of political intrigue and betrayal. Medieval chronicles, written shortly after his death, painted his fall as a cautionary tale about the fragility of power. These early accounts, while often biased, laid the groundwork for later interpretations. By the Renaissance, poets and playwrights began to dramatize the mystery, portraying Alexander as a noble figure undone by the treachery of those around him. The idea of a poisoned crown became a recurring motif, symbolizing the dangers of ambition and deceit. In the 19th century, as historical novels gained popularity, Alexander's death became a favorite subject for writers exploring Scotland's past. Authors like Sir Walter Scott used the mystery to delve into themes of national identity and the struggle for independence. These works often romanticized Alexander's reign, presenting his death as a pivotal moment in Scotland's history. At the same time, they fueled speculation about the true cause of his demise, blending fact with fiction to create compelling narratives. Art, too, has played a significant role in shaping the legacy of Alexander's death. Medieval tapestries and illuminated manuscripts depicted the king's fall in dramatic detail, often emphasizing the stormy night and the chaos that followed. Later, during the Romantic era, painters turned to the story as a source of inspiration, capturing the tragedy and mystery in vivid, emotional scenes. These visual representations not only brought the story to life, but also reinforced the idea of Alexander as a tragic hero cut down in his prime. In modern times, Alexander's death has found new life in popular culture. Films, television series, and even video games have reimagined the mystery, often adding their own twists to the tale. These adaptations frequently draw on the conspiracy theories we've discussed, presenting Alexander's death as the result of a grand political scheme. By doing so, they keep the story alive for new generations, ensuring that the mystery remains a topic of fascination and debate. What's striking about these cultural depictions is how they reflect the values and concerns of their time. In the medieval period, the focus was on moral lessons and divine retribution. During the Renaissance, the emphasis shifted to human ambition and the complexities of power. In the modern era, the story has become a lens through which we explore themes of justice, truth, and the search for answers. Each interpretation adds to the rich tapestry of Alexander's legacy, shaping how we perceive his reign and his untimely death. As we move forward, the story of Alexander III's death continues to inspire creativity and curiosity. Whether through a novel, a painting, or a film, these cultural depictions remind us that history is not just a collection of facts but a living, evolving narrative. And as we'll see next, this mystery has also drawn comparisons to other famous royal deaths, offering new insights into the enduring allure of unsolved historical puzzles. Now, let's turn our attention to how Alexander III's death stacks up against other infamous royal mysteries throughout history. These stories, shrouded in intrigue and unanswered questions, share a common thread of fascination, yet each carries its own unique twists and turns. By comparing Alexander's death to other well-known cases, we can uncover deeper insights into why these mysteries captivate us so deeply. Take, for example, the disappearance of the princes in the tower. Like Alexander's death, this mystery revolves around a sudden and unexplained loss of life that left a kingdom in turmoil. The two young princes, heirs to the English throne, vanished in the late 15th century, and their fate remains one of history's most enduring puzzles. Both cases involve questions of succession, political ambition, and the shadowy machinations of those in power. Yet, while Alexander's death is often framed as a tragic accident or a targeted assassination, the princes in the tower are widely believed to have been victims of a deliberate and calculated act of violence. This contrast highlights how different societies and eras interpret royal tragedies, with some leaning toward conspiracy and others toward misfortune. Another compelling comparison is the death of King Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Discovered in the early 20th century, Tutankhamun's tomb sparked global fascination, not just for its treasures but for the mystery surrounding his untimely death. Like Alexander, Tutankhamun died young, leaving behind a legacy of speculation. Was his death the result of natural causes, an accident, or something more sinister? Modern forensic science has shed some light on Tutankhamun's case, suggesting he may have died from complications of an injury or illness. In contrast, Alexander's death remains clouded by the limitations of medieval record-keeping and the lack of physical evidence. This difference underscores how advancements in technology and historical methods can reshape our understanding of the past, even as some mysteries remain stubbornly unsolved. What ties these stories together is their ability to spark endless debate and imagination. Whether it's Alexander's fall on a stormy night, the vanished princes in the Tower of London, or the young pharaoh's enigmatic demise, these mysteries invite us to question the official narratives and explore the hidden layers of history. They remind us that power, ambition, and human nature are timeless themes, capable of transcending centuries and cultures. As we reflect on these comparisons, it's clear that Alexander III's death is not just a medieval mystery but part of a broader tapestry of royal intrigue. Each case offers a unique lens through which to examine the complexities of leadership, the fragility of life, and the enduring allure of the unknown. And as we'll see next, the impact of Alexander's death on Scottish history goes far beyond the mystery itself, shaping the course of a nation for generations to come. Turning now to the broader implications, Alexander III's death didn't just leave a void in the Scottish monarchy. It set off a chain reaction that reshaped the nation's destiny. Without a clear heir to the throne, Scotland plunged into a period of uncertainty and political instability. This vacuum of power became the catalyst for one of the most defining chapters in Scottish history, the Wars of Scottish Independence. The death of Alexander in 1286 left the throne to his young granddaughter, Margaret, known as the Maid of Norway. But her untimely death just a few years later deepened the crisis, leaving Scotland without a direct successor. This led to a bitter struggle for the crown, with multiple claimants vying for power. The resulting chaos drew the attention of England's King Edward I, who saw an opportunity to assert his influence over Scotland. His intervention sparked a series of conflicts that would last for decades, as the Scots fought to preserve their independence and sovereignty. One of the most significant outcomes of this turbulent period was the rise of Robert the Bruce. A nobleman with a claim to the throne, Bruce emerged as a central figure in the fight for Scottish independence. His crowning as King of Scots in 1306 marked a turning point in the struggle against English domination. Bruce's leadership, coupled with his victory at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, solidified Scotland's resolve and laid the foundation for its future as an independent nation. But the impact of Alexander's death extended beyond the battlefield. The wars of Scottish independence galvanized a sense of national identity among the Scottish people. The resistance to English rule became a unifying force, inspiring legends like William Wallace and shaping the cultural and political landscape of Scotland for centuries to come. The Declaration of Arbroath in 1320, a bold assertion of Scottish sovereignty, stands as a testament to the enduring legacy of this era. In many ways, Alexander III's death was the spark that ignited a firestorm of change. It set in motion events that would define Scotland's struggle for independence and its place in history. The rise of Robert the Bruce, the battles fought, and the ideals championed during this time all trace their roots back to that fateful night in 1286. As we'll explore next, the mystery of Alexander's death isn't just about what happened, it's about how it shaped the course of a nation. Now, let's turn our attention to the myths and misconceptions that have clouded the story of Alexander III's death. Over the centuries, countless theories have emerged, some rooted in historical evidence, while others veer into the realm of speculation and legend. Separating fact from fiction is no easy task, but by examining the evidence, we can shed light on what truly happened and what remains a mystery. One of the most persistent myths is that Alexander's death was the result of a carefully orchestrated assassination plot. While it's true that his sudden demise created a power vacuum, there's little concrete evidence to support the idea of a deliberate murder. The official account points to a tragic accident, a fall from his horse during a stormy night. This version is supported by contemporary records, which describe the treacherous conditions and the lack of witnesses. However, the absence of definitive proof has allowed conspiracy theories to flourish. Another common misconception is that Alexander was poisoned. Poisoning was a favored method of assassination in medieval courts, and it's easy to see why this theory gained traction. Yet, historical accounts make no mention of poisoning, and there's no evidence to suggest that Alexander exhibited symptoms consistent with such a method. While it's tempting to imagine a dramatic poisoning plot, the reality is likely far less sensational. Some have also speculated that Alexander's death was the result of divine punishment or a curse. This idea stems from the medieval belief that the deaths of kings were often seen as acts of God, especially in times of political turmoil. While this theory reflects the mindset of the era, it doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Alexander's death was more likely the result of human error and misfortune rather than supernatural intervention. What's clear is that much of what we think we know about Alexander's death is shaped by the stories that have been passed down through the centuries. These tales often reflect the fears, biases, and imaginations of those who told them. By examining the historical records, we can separate the facts from the fiction and gain a clearer understanding of what truly happened on that fateful night in 1286. As we move forward, we'll explore how these myths have evolved over time and how they've influenced our perception of Alexander's death. The line between fact and fiction may be blurred, but by digging deeper, we can uncover the truth, or at least get closer to it. Now, let's shift our focus to the role of propaganda in shaping the story of Alexander III's death. In the aftermath of his sudden demise, various factions saw an opportunity to manipulate the narrative to serve their own interests. The power vacuum left by Alexander's death created a fertile ground for political maneuvering, and propaganda became a powerful tool in the struggle for control. One of the most significant ways propaganda influenced the narrative was through the portrayal of Alexander's death as either a tragic accident or a deliberate act of treachery. Those who benefited from the official account, that his death was an accident used it to maintain stability and avoid suspicion. By emphasizing the stormy conditions and lack of witnesses, they reinforced the idea that no foul play was involved. This version of events served to quell unrest and prevent rival factions from using the tragedy to incite rebellion. On the other hand, those who stood to gain from chaos or a change in leadership spread rumors of foul play. These factions painted Alexander's death as the result of a conspiracy, often pointing fingers at their political enemies. By casting doubt on the official story, they aimed to undermine their rivals and position themselves as the rightful leaders of Scotland. The lack of concrete evidence allowed these rumors to spread unchecked, fueling suspicion and division. The Church also played a role in shaping the narrative. As a powerful institution in medieval society, the Church had its own agenda. Some religious leaders may have used Alexander's death to reinforce the idea of divine judgment, suggesting that his demise was a punishment for his actions or a sign of God's displeasure. This narrative served to strengthen the Church's influence and remind the populace of its moral authority. Even foreign powers, particularly England, may have contributed to the propaganda surrounding Alexander's death. The political tensions between Scotland and England were high, and some English factions may have seen an opportunity to weaken Scotland by spreading rumors of instability or internal betrayal. By sowing discord, they hoped to destabilize their northern neighbor and gain an advantage in their ongoing rivalry. What's clear is that propaganda played a significant role in shaping how Alexander's death was perceived. Different factions used the tragedy to further their own agendas, whether by promoting stability, inciting rebellion, or undermining their enemies. The stories they told were often less about the truth and more about achieving their political goals. As we continue to explore the mystery of Alexander's death, it's important to consider how these narratives have influenced our understanding of the event. The line between fact and fiction is often blurred, and propaganda has played a key role in shaping the stories we tell about the past. By examining these influences, we can better understand the complexities of this medieval mystery and the forces that shaped its legacy. Next, we'll delve into the unanswered questions that still surround Alexander's death, exploring what we know and what we may never know about this pivotal moment in Scottish history. As we turn our attention to the lingering mysteries of Alexander III's death, it's impossible not to wonder what questions still haunt historians and enthusiasts alike. Despite centuries of speculation and investigation, key aspects of this medieval enigma remain shrouded in uncertainty. These unanswered questions not only deepen the intrigue, but also offer a fascinating glimpse into the complexities of medieval politics and power struggles. One of the most pressing questions is whether Alexander's death was truly an accident or the result of a carefully orchestrated plot. While the official account points to a tragic fall during a storm, the lack of witnesses and the timing of his death have fueled suspicions of foul play. Could someone have taken advantage of the chaotic weather to stage an accident, or was the storm itself a convenient cover for a more sinister act? The absence of definitive evidence leaves this question unresolved, inviting endless debate. Another mystery revolves around the potential involvement of Scottish nobles. Many of these powerful figures had motives to see Alexander removed from the throne, whether to advance their own ambitions or to weaken rival factions. Yet, without concrete proof, their roles remain speculative. Who among them stood to gain the most from his death, and how far were they willing to go to secure their interests? These questions highlight the cutthroat nature of medieval politics, where loyalty was often secondary to personal gain. The role of foreign powers, particularly England, also raises intriguing possibilities. Given the tense relationship between Scotland and England at the time, could English agents have played a part in Alexander's demise? Some theories suggest that destabilizing Scotland would have served England's strategic interests, but without clear evidence, this remains a tantalizing yet unproven idea. The possibility of external interference underscores the broader geopolitical tensions of the era. Even the circumstances surrounding Alexander's journey to Kinghorn that fateful night are riddled with questions. Why did he choose to travel in such treacherous conditions? Was he responding to an urgent matter, or was he lured into a trap? The motivations behind his decision to make the journey remain unclear, adding another layer of mystery to the story. Perhaps the most enduring question is why these mysteries persist. The lack of reliable records from the time, combined with the deliberate spread of propaganda, has made it difficult to separate fact from fiction. Medieval politics thrived on secrecy and manipulation, and Alexander's death became a canvas on which competing narratives were painted. These unanswered questions remind us that history is often as much about what we don't know as what we do. As we reflect on these lingering uncertainties, it's clear that Alexander's death is more than just a historical event. It's a window into the intricate and often ruthless world of medieval power. The questions that remain unanswered continue to captivate us, not only because of their inherent mystery, but also because they reveal the enduring complexities of human ambition and intrigue. Next, we'll explore how modern investigative techniques might shed new light on this centuries-old mystery, asking whether we could solve the case of Alexander III's death with the tools of today. Now, let's shift our focus to the present day and ask a compelling question. Could modern investigative techniques finally unravel the mystery of Alexander III's death? With advancements in forensic science, historical analysis, and technology, we have tools at our disposal that medieval investigators could only dream of. But would these methods be enough to crack a case that's over 700 years old? One of the first challenges lies in the physical evidence, or rather, the lack of it. Unlike modern crime scenes where DNA, fingerprints, and digital footprints can provide crucial clues, Alexander's death left behind no tangible evidence that could be analyzed today. His body was buried centuries ago, and any remains that might have offered insights have long since decayed. Without access to his physical remains, modern forensic techniques like DNA analysis or toxicology tests are simply not an option. Another hurdle is the reliability of historical records. While medieval chronicles and documents provide valuable context, they are often biased, incomplete, or contradictory. Propaganda and political agendas shaped many of these accounts, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. Modern historians and investigators would need to sift through these sources with a critical eye, cross-referencing them with archaeological findings and other evidence to piece together a more accurate picture. That said, modern technology does offer some promising avenues. For instance, advanced imaging techniques could be used to analyze artifacts or documents from the period, potentially revealing hidden details or overlooked clues. Similarly, digital reconstructions of the terrain and weather conditions on the night of Alexander's death might help us better understand whether his fall was truly accidental or staged. Another intriguing possibility lies in the field of historical epidemiology. By studying patterns of disease, diet, and health in medieval Scotland, researchers might uncover indirect evidence about Alexander's physical condition at the time of his death. Could he have been weakened by illness, making him more vulnerable to an accident or even a deliberate attack? While this approach wouldn't provide definitive answers, it could offer valuable context. Of course, even with these tools, the passage of time remains a formidable obstacle. Memories fade, evidence decays, and the truth becomes harder to discern with each passing century. The very nature of medieval politics, shrouded in secrecy and manipulation, means that some aspects of Alexander's death may never be fully understood. Yet, the pursuit of answers continues to captivate us. Modern investigations into historical mysteries like this one remind us of the enduring power of curiosity and the human desire to uncover the truth. While we may never know for certain what happened to Alexander III, The journey of exploration itself is a testament to the resilience of history and the stories it leaves behind. As we move forward, let's reflect on Alexander's legacy and how his untimely death shaped the course of Scottish history, a topic we'll explore in the next section. Turning our attention to the lasting impact of Alexander III, it's impossible to overlook how his untimely death left an indelible mark on Scottish history. His reign, though cut short, was a period of relative stability and prosperity for Scotland, a stark contrast to the chaos that followed his passing. Alexander's death didn't just end a life, it triggered a chain of events that would reshape the nation's future. One of the most immediate consequences was the succession crisis that plunged Scotland into uncertainty. With no clear heir to the throne, rival factions vied for power, leading to political instability and conflict. This vacuum ultimately set the stage for the Wars of Scottish Independence, a defining chapter in the nation's history. Alexander's death, in many ways, became the catalyst for Scotland's struggle to maintain its sovereignty against external threats, particularly from England. But Alexander's legacy extends beyond the turmoil that followed his demise. He is remembered as a capable and determined ruler who worked tirelessly to strengthen Scotland's position on the international stage. His efforts to secure alliances, foster economic growth, and maintain internal stability earned him respect both at home and abroad. Even today, historians regard him as one of Scotland's most effective medieval monarchs, a leader whose potential was tragically cut short. What makes Alexander's story so compelling, however, is not just his achievements but the mystery surrounding his death. The unanswered questions, was it an accident or was there foul play, continue to spark debate and intrigue. This blend of historical significance and unresolved mystery has made Alexander a figure of enduring fascination. His story resonates with anyone drawn to tales of power, betrayal, and the fragility of human ambition. Moreover, Alexander's legacy serves as a reminder of how individual lives can shape the course of history. His death didn't just alter the trajectory of Scotland, it influenced the broader dynamics of medieval Europe. The Wars of Scottish Independence, fueled by the instability following his passing, had far-reaching consequences, from the rise of figures like Robert the Bruce to the eventual formation of Scotland's national identity. For historians, Alexander's reign and death offer a rich tapestry of political intrigue, cultural shifts, and human drama. For the public, his story is a gripping reminder of how the past continues to echo in the present. Whether viewed through the lens of historical analysis or as a captivating mystery, Alexander III's legacy endures, a testament to the enduring power of history to inspire, challenge, and captivate us. As we near the end of our exploration, let's take a moment to reflect on the lessons Alexander's story offers, not just about the past, but about the ways in which history shapes our understanding of the world today. As we bring our journey through the mystery of Alexander III's death to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered. From the stormy night at Kinghorn to the whispers of foul play, the story of Alexander's demise is a tapestry of intrigue, ambition, and unanswered questions. We've explored the official narrative of a tragic accident, delved into the theories of poisoning and political conspiracy, and examined the roles of nobles, foreign powers, and even the church. Yet, despite centuries of speculation, the truth remains elusive, shrouded in the mists of history. Alexander's death was more than just the end of a king, it was a turning point for Scotland. The succession crisis that followed plunged the nation into chaos, setting the stage for the Wars of Scottish Independence and shaping the country's future in ways no one could have foreseen. His legacy, both as a ruler and as the center of one of history's greatest mysteries, continues to captivate us, reminding us of the fragile nature of power and the enduring allure of the unknown. So, what do you think? Was Alexander's death a tragic accident, or was there something more sinister at play? The theories are as varied as they are compelling, and the debate is far from over. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know who you believe was responsible. And if you're as fascinated by medieval mysteries as we are, don't forget to explore more stories like this one. History is full of secrets waiting to be uncovered, and we're here to bring them to life for you. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the mystery of Alexander III's death. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep uncovering the mysteries of the past. History is waiting for you.